This podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek. Our friends over at SeatGeek are giving us a promo code of TBA Wrestling. That is TBA Wrestling for $20 off your first purchase. Enjoy the show. Welcome to Gunners R Us podcast, where we are positively Arsenal, and that we are. And here we are again in the echoy studio. So hopefully it wasn't too bad last week. I know it was not perfect audio. I put a little bit of feedback protection on it, which our friend Bruno, who comes in for the Man United games, probably laughed at the fact that probably does nothing for an echoey room. But I'm going to try another noise gate or filter or something to try and help this audio this week. But we will be getting closer each week to a new studio, and there will be carpet and soundproofing. So it won't be an echoey empty room. That currently sits a desk, a mic, a laptop, 2 WrestleMania 26 chairs, and me. So hopefully it's not too bad. It's been an interesting week because I think last week we talked about the fact that not much is going to happen between that episode and the next. And then this is going up early simply because we will not be doing TikTok this week at 10 a.m. GMT. On Gunners R Us Pod, because we will be flying at that time because we're over in Orlando for Joe's stag. So this is going up early, but nothing's really going to change. But I can then preview the PSV game. So if you're listening to this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about Forest. The weekend that was, as far as some mad stuff with like Mateta, Gordon, an interesting FA Cup quarterfinal grouping. Liverpool kind of essentially winning the league since last episode, and talking about what's coming up, which will be the Premier League Prediction League at the end of the episode, where we'll talk a little bit about Man United, which I will be watching in warmer climate, which will be very nice compared to the climate we've been experiencing here, which is like -3 today. So we'll be getting to all of these things today. To start with, I think we'll just kind of start with where we left off last week, which was we were going into the Forest game, and we kind of said, and I think as a podcast generally we've said for about 7 or 8 weeks the season's over, and that's not because you should give up on it. I don't think you should give up on the season, but when you look at injuries and you look at the points ahead Liverpool are, the fact that Salah's having a generational year and he's unbelievable, I don't think it was in the cards for us to win the league, because I do think when you win the league, you need a standout player who has one of those years. We had it with Henry. City have had it with Haaland. They've had it with Foden and De Bruyne. Liverpool have had it with Salah already before. You need like a standout player, plus you need the team to kind of galvanise that year, plus you need luck with things like injuries, maybe a couple of decisions, not just for you, but for the teams around you getting some odd ones, or teams around you taking points off of each other. You need these kind of things just to go your way, and that culminates in you winning the league. I would also like to preface that with, the more I've thought about it, and the more I've kind of looked at it, and I, as an Arsenal fan's point of view, I really believe the fixture list, the first 10 games, we looked at on paper and said, this is not good. Then we had those decisions that were not, you won't see them ever again. And ironically, we'll get to this as well, because there's been a new bit of, like a new ruling for next year that's coming that we'll joke, because at the start of every year we predict what rule they're going to come up with that they're going to apply for just 7 or 8 weeks and then give up on, and what team is going to be deeply affected by it. This year, Arsenal were the team that got madly affected by it. Usually annoyingly, it's a team that do end up getting relegated. It's not going to obviously have that kind of effect on us, but there's been worse things than, coming second or third in the league. Some teams, I remember Burnley, I've talked about before, any kind of shirt pulling in the box, they gave away like 7 or 8 penalties in the first 7 or 8 weeks, and it was only them. Then they scrapped the rule and just said we're not going to be as intense, and Burnley had lost enough points in that time that they ended up getting relegated. They lose out a lot of money, a lot of players, and that's why they're back in the Championship. This wasn't last year, it was a few years ago, but it contributes to a club going up and down and yo-yoing. So for us, it was just the difference between us winning the league or not. But what I was going to say was, I don't think that is the difference between us winning the league or not. I think us at full strength, us not getting the bad decisions, and us not having quite as many injuries as we had, I don't think we could stop this Liverpool team with Salah in that form. And I don't think we expected Salah at this age to, I know it's a contract year, to quite have the form he's having. But I think when you look at their squad, less injuries than a lot of teams, really high pressure, good football, strong football, and then Salah having an unreal season, McAllister having his best season so far, Gravenberg really finding his position. I think when all that stuff goes your way, whether you get decisions or not, whether you get injuries or not, whether the other teams around you get them, I think you win the league. And I think Liverpool are just kind of the best team in the league, and they're going to win the league. So, as an Arsenal fan, again, this is an Arsenal podcast, so if you're listening to it, you might be thinking, if we go on about injuries and stuff like that, it's excuses. I think the conversation has to be done in sport is not everything's an excuse. Sometimes it's just the reason. And I think the Arsenal fans have got their back up a little bit on it, because we're not really supposed to be challenging for the league when you look at money spent, money, weekly wages, the way in which they talk about us in the media as being a rubbish team that bottle it a lot. 4 or 5 years ago, they said we'd never been in the top four. Once we made it to second, they said they should be winning the league. But that's the same exact squad you said shouldn't be in the top four. So, make your mind up. So as an Arsenal fan, I think we got to back up a little bit, because we know probably deep down we weren't good enough this year. From the get-go, we knew we were short. We became even shorter with the red cards and then all the injuries. So that's why if we were at full strength, we're still not competing. When you look at Liverpool, they're winning games against Newcastle 2-0. And they bring about 215 million off the bench. Whereas we're bringing Zinchenko to play up front, Tierney to play left wing. The team that finished that the Nottingham Forest game was Tierney, Marino, and who was the other one? Sterling. That front three isn't going to challenge for a title. It just isn't. And people might say, but that wasn't a front three to start the season. No, and we dropped points before we had massive injuries. But there's just been an underlying issue throughout the season. We bought Moreno in the midfield to kind of get rid of that left 8 issue we had. He misses the first 2 months due to injury. Then we bring in Calafiori to play left back. He misses 2 months for injury. Timber, we want to ease back in after being out for a year. Ben White gets injured for 5-6 months. Timber has to play every game. And people might say Saliba and Gabriel, Rice, they've all been fit all season. Rice obviously broke his toe and was in and out of the team for 6-7 weeks. Saka pulled his hamstring, came back, pulled his hamstring, came back, tore his hamstring. Jesus came back from a bad injury, finally got into form, and then is out for a year. Tomiyasu's going to be out for another year on top of the year he's just missed. Zinchenko had a calf problem for 6 weeks. When you look at Odegaard was out for 2.5 months with a sprained ankle. When you look at that now, Havertz obviously with the torn hamstring. Martinelli has missed periods earlier in the season, and now he's missing another month and a half. When you look at that, whether you were strong or not, you're not going to be able to bring on the type of players that people like Liverpool are able to. And when you do look around the league, you look at City lost Rodri, and that was the main injury they had, and look how they fell off. You look at Spurs with the injuries they've had and how they've fallen off. Look at Man United with some of the injuries they've had and how they've fallen off. Us falling off is in the last, the round of 16 in the Champions League and second in the league. And I think most fans would agree at the start of the season we were short of a forward. We became even more short of a forward. So the fact that we're kind of doing it is actually something to be really proud of. If the narrative wasn't why aren't Arsenal winning the league, we all deep down as football fans know Arsenal shouldn't have won the league this year, even from the get-go, let alone what happened. We should look at the positives, and the positives really are we've made it through. And not just that, we've managed to bring through a 17 and 18-year-old in Winery and Lewis Skelly to become almost first-teamers that we trust. We've learned a lot more about what Moreno is. We've learned if we need to move on from Zinchenko, Partey, Jorginho and likes. We learned that even when you're down this deep into your squad. You're not going to bring Vieira back off loan, which probably says a lot about what they think about Vieira. So yeah, it's been a real learning season, and I think there's actually going to be massive benefits. And obviously, you hope. Joe and I had a conversation off air, which was Liverpool having the year they had this year, where Salah plays this well, the injuries are lighter, a lot of the teams around them fell off. You want all that to happen in 1 year because that guarantees you a league. What you don't want, like for example, if Saka was, he's fourth or fifth in chances created and assists, and he hasn't played since basically the end of November. When you think of that, Saka was going to have a generational year. What you don't want is Saka to have his best ever year in a year where we have 11 injuries week to week. And Salah's also having a generational year. You almost need that kind of luck to fall in a different year. Let's say it's next year. Let's say City do get a deduction. Let's say Salah, Van Dijk or Trent or one of the three, two of the three, all three of them move on, and Salah has to deal with second season, like a sophomore slump, plus the probability of him having as little injuries as he's had this year, next year, it's very unlikely. You hope that all of a sudden we have this year where we just don't get the injuries, and whoever we bring in is unbelievable, and Saka has a generational year, or Odegaard has his best ever season. That all has to happen in 1 year for you to win the league. So for one of those things to have happened in a year that's such a dud for us, and again, we have to remind ourselves, us having such a dud is what we dreamed of 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago. If someone had said to me 4 years ago that this would be our worst season, coming second potentially, and so I was having a drink because I'm talking so much, I would have laughed and said, yeah, of course, yeah, it's a bad season. I would have dreamt of that being one of our best ever seasons in my lifetime going forward, because I've said it before and I really didn't think we would ever really be top four ever again with the money that's going into these other teams. So I'm pretty chuffed with that, and that's the positives we can kind of take from it. I think the Forest game was almost that in a nutshell, in the sense that we knew we were good up to the neck. The head just wasn't there. And that's exactly what we saw. I think for a team that are third in the league, we completely dominated them. They had pretty much no chances in the whole game. We had the ball the whole time. We created a few chances, just didn't put them away. But realistically, you could just... You'll never see a game that's more evident of a team that are really good, but they just don't have an attack. And that's what it was. And mixture of that and Liverpool kind of just rolling over Newcastle quite comfortably. And I know there's a side note here that within the space of 3 days, they had to go away to City and Newcastle, and you think that's the, we've talked about on the podcast, that's when they'll drop points. And Newcastle and City go ahead and leave Haaland out. And then Newcastle, Isaac's missed one game this season, he misses this one. But Isaac's there to talk to Liverpool and things like that, and you think, yeah, it's not our year. We've had to deal with Isaac how many times this year? 3 times already, still got another one. Haaland, we've had to deal with every time. We even had to go to the Etihad with no Saka, no Odegaard. We've had to deal with City at home without Saka, and they've got Haaland and Mamouche and all these players. So this is this is my issue. I think Liverpool fans, they're almost getting a little, I'd say, butthurt by Arsenal fans talking about this discourse online, which, like I said, isn't an excuse. Sorry, I had to pause it there for dog barking. It's no excuse, it's just reasons. And I think Liverpool fans are getting to see Arsenal fans discussing this, because it's not an issue of any other team. There's no, if I was Liverpool right now and we were having a season like they're having, and Liverpool were going, yeah, but, they've had a load of injury. I couldn't care less. I don't know why they're so bothered by it. Any season you can look at, pretty much there's a reason why one team won and the other one didn't. And if you ask the team that didn't, they'll tell you, whether it be injuries, a decision, one game in particular. It's not an excuse, not saying there was something wrong. For example, the reason we'll lose this season, will come down to, of course, we dropped a lot of points in games where they sent us off for no apparent reason. But we also, when we did have reason, for example, Fulham away, we drew. Villa at home, 2-0 lead, blew it, 2-2. Forest this week, losing to West Ham at home. put us all in the winning position of all four of them, which was completely in our control. We're 3 points behind Liverpool. So it's not that we're miles off. It's just we didn't have the attack to end any of these games. And we didn't know how to figure it out with the injuries we had. And that's an Arsenal issue. But Liverpool fan hearing that might think, oh, it's just excuse. And it's like, well, no, you're not. You don't even need to be privy to that conversation, because especially an Arsenal podcast. I mean, if you're a Liverpool fan listening to it, you're either a friend of mine, and I appreciate the download, or you're just a glutton for punishment, because I wouldn't go out of my way to listen to, a Spurs one where they might be talking about how, Arsenal are having their best ever spell and they're not winning the league. This is brilliant. All right. It's much better than theirs. Do you know what I mean? Like it's all relative. And, my main thing is, to win a league, you really need a lot of things to go your way, plus being the best team. Because sometimes, for example, I think last year we were pretty close to being the best team. A lot of things went our way, but we couldn't get it done. City were that little bit better, and that's frustration. But yeah, of course, it would have been amazing if City had dropped off last year, not this year, and then maybe we had won it last year, and then City would win it this year, and we maybe feel less pressure. But it didn't happen that way. And when we do, it's almost nice, isn't it? Because we're on the right track. I'm hoping we can win a league in the next few years. That it'll be even sweeter when we wait for it, if that makes sense. Because I think we're on our way to something special. And the whole Arteta out stuff is just the lunacy. But we got to just keep our head in it. Because, there's a Champions League right there, PSV. If we just got to get through PSV. If we can get through this away game tomorrow night, 0-0, 1-1, 1-0 win even, and run into the Emirates, still with no attack, but just edge by. We then got an international break, and you will probably have Martinelli back, and we're starting to look at Saka. If we can start getting that back, and we can find a little bit of rhythm with the new version of our attack. Real Madrid counter-attacked and defended their way to a Champions. I think he said Super Bowl, Champions League last year, and there's no reason why the way in which we defend and dominate games that we couldn't possibly do that. I genuinely believe we could. You need a lot of things to go your way, but for how much has gone not our way in the Premier League, maybe everything goes our way in the Champions League. And if you win that, you forget about the whole season. The whole season is not remembered as that year that everything kind of went against us. It's the season we finally won something in Europe, which we've never done. And all of a sudden, Sterling, Harry, Martinelli, these guys that really dragged us through times. Sterling hasn't dragged us through, but he's been available. I'll say that. They all become a bit immortalised, So it's amazing how quickly the season can be so different. I think Arteta, as a coach, will definitely get into the team about the fact that at the end of the season and look back at it as maybe one of his best seasons, because with so little resource, with so much against him, he still managed to do something. And I know people are ripping into us if we come second. It's like, we three-peated second. I'd much rather three-peat second than come second, then sixth and second and be like, look, we had a bad year, like most teams do. That's real consistency. I don't think he can't get over the line, that manager can't do it. I don't think he has a say in getting things over the line. That's the players. I don't think there's certain managers that get over the line and some that don't. I think there's some managers that manage teams that get over the line. So it's such a positive that the Forest game just really felt like they were out on their feet of just, we're out of ideas. I don't know how we get these group of players to actually score goals. And that's absolutely fine. And Liverpool winning at the same time. If anything, it was nice because we can, on the evening, I was almost thinking do we kind of want Liverpool to win? Just because and I've said it for weeks, I'm more worried about the teams below us than the teams above us. We're closer to 10th than we are to Liverpool. We need Newcastle, we need Chelsea, we need City, we need Forest. We need these teams to just lose a few, because the way in which we're playing, which is very good up until that final point, teams like West Ham will do a job on us because they know we can't actually score. Nuno Santo literally said we didn't play five at the back because they don't have any attackers, so we didn't need to defend that. That's a worry, because as much as we can dominate the ball and all that, teams will score set pieces and counterattacks. Like Forest could have done that at one point, but they didn't. We will lose 2 or 3 games between now and the end of the season. If we're not careful, City, Chelsea, Newcastle, these teams will, Forest, they will find us and we'll drop into sixth. And then when you're panicking and trying to win games, you'll lose more, because when you're sending Marino and Rice into the box late on in a game to try and turn a draw into a win, you'll get counterattacked, you'll lose, and you'll drop to seventh. So we got to be really cognizant of the most important thing right now is nothing to do with Liverpool. It's about getting rhythm, getting players back, and just winning as many as we can out of this end. And really put some onus on the Champions League, because we work all year for these Champions League moments. Don't let it just kind of pass us by. We've got PSV, we've got a horrible draw. Beyond that, I mean, it's probably going to be Real Madrid and Liverpool to get to Barcelona. That's not an ideal run. I mean, when you think of City winning theirs against Inter Milan, sometimes teams make it to find, like last year, Real Madrid ended up against Dortmund. It's not going to be one of those years, I don't think. And without top players, I don't know if they can make the difference. But once you have Saka and Martinelli fit, if that is something that could happen by the second leg of Madrid, either one, we're in with a shout. I mean, Liverpool, Villa, PSG, any of those over two legs, we proved against PSG, we proved against Villa, we can beat them. Liverpool, I could probably see us drawing at home and losing away, which is what will happen in the league, I would have thought as well. So it's not easy, but I mean, it's there. So the season's not done. But I actually almost found relief in the fact that they won and we didn't. And it was almost like going, all right, that part's over. We don't have to, because you're kind of caught in this kind of roundabout way of worrying about them, but also worrying about below and all that kind of stuff. I think now it's just about getting more minutes into Waneri, maintaining top four, and seeing what happens in the Champions League, because it's going to be so beneficial at the end of the year when we need to move on. Like Neto goes back off loan, Sterling goes back off loan, Partey, Jorginho ended their deals, they go. Zinchenko will probably be sold to Dortmund. And I think that's it. But they're looking at Zubimendi. There was talk this week of a Kimmich free, which as a replacement, if Jorginho and Partey left and Zubimendi and Kimmich came in, that's a really big step up, I think, to an extent. I actually think we play a lot better with Jorginho style, and I think Zubimendi and Kimmich are way closer to Jorginho than they are to Partey. I think Partey is a really fun player to watch, but the legginess, the lack of defensive, the constantly going forward, as much as it's fun to watch, it's kind of a detriment sometimes to the team, whereas Kimmich and Zubimendi are a lot steadier. Like Jorginho, I think we just generally play better, and I think Rice is better off for it. So those two guys will be great signings. There's talk of Martinelli or Trossard being moved on to Saudi. I think it'll be Trossard. I don't think Martinelli will go. I don't think we should get rid of Martinelli either. Probably get money for Vieira and Nelson. There's a chance I could see Nelson staying. But then you have to go get that forward. It's probably going to be Sesko and Nico Williams, very likely. But I mean, Sesko, Nico Williams, Zubimendi, Kimmich, and a goalie seems like one of the madder transfer windows you'll hear. But the bit I'm still confused by is the two midfielders go, we bring in two. That's fine. Moreno and Rice are still there, Odegaard, and now Zinchenko. Waneri's played a lot more minutes. That's 6 players in the midfield. We pretty much had that exact midfield this year, and we felt a little light at times where maybe we needed another player. Naipan is another player that we're looking at, but again, he's, Waneri age, so whether he could come straight in and do anything, I don't know. The defence this year, Ben White, if he's back, and with Timber as the right backs, Kivior as the backup to Saliba and Gabriel. Tierney's moving on, obviously. And then left back, you've got Calafiori and Lewis Skelly now. I think that's enough. Tomiyasu obviously is going to be back around the winter time. He's another cover for any of those positions. Kivior's a cover for any of those positions. I don't think they need to actually bring in any defensive players. But they're up front. If you do lose Trossard and Sterling goes back off loan and Nelson doesn't come back and Vieira doesn't come back, you'll start next year with Havertz, Saka and Martinelli. Jesus isn't back until next January. If we bring in Nico Williams and Sesko, that's good. But we were light at the start of this season and we had 2 extra players. So really they have to buy 4, which I cannot see. I'm hoping for it somehow they'll get 90 million for Trossard or something from Saudi, because these other clubs have done so well at kind of offloading some older players for massive money to really balance their books for spending. Because if we can get the money for Trossard from Saudi, that is the amount in which we're going to spend on like a Nico Williams, that's huge. Because, that's a big change for us. And the other thing is Waneri now the understudy to Saka. And I think we'd all be pretty excited about Waneri playing more games as opposed to buying a new right winger. Maybe it's Saka and Waneri, and then you have such Martinelli and just completely blank, Nico Williams, and then up front you have Havertz start the season with Sesko, and then Jesus is coming back, and if Jesus comes back in form, we'll get 6 months out of him before we probably sell him the following summer. So you would have 7 names there, and Jesus can also play right and left. But then the midfield, I would still be a little bit nervous about that, but I still think he might try and shoehorn Havertz back, because if Sesko's starting games, Havertz will drop in the midfield, that kind of thing. So maybe that is the way we do it. Maybe what I've kind of said is the outline of what they'll do. Maybe bring in 5 players total, but there will be a lot going out. That Tierney's already signed a pre-agreement. Zinchenko will go. Neto has to go back off loan. Sterling has to go back off loan. Partey and Jorginho are getting moved on, and then potentially Trossard, Vieira, Nelson. That's 9 players, and I'm bringing in 5. And the squad was thin. So there's certain players that I think, someone like Vieira, I think we'd do really well just to keep him. Nelson, we need to keep. Because I think we almost got rid of too many players this year. When you look at Mika Bierith, who's scoring hat-tricks, Obi, who has gone to Man United, these are the kind of players that will pack out your Carabao Cup and your kind of subs bench. Whereas now we're kind of at a point where we have all these first teamers that are in the bottom half of the pitch, left backs, centre backs, holding midfielders, but then we've got no forwards. There's no, wild card off the bench that is from the youth academy, because the youth academy is playing the game. So I think the balance is a little wrong. I think there's players like Vieira and that to avoid buying lots of £10 million players to just sit on your bench. I think Nelson, Vieira coming back off loan and just being a part of the squad is good. I think Max Dowman, I think you're going to see a lot more of him next year. I mean, the way in which he played against Man United the other night was unreal. There's quite a bit of tension between Man United and Arsenal. They played the other night. Dowman was unbelievable. He's only 14, I believe. He's about just turned 15 maybe, but it's a mad age to be that good. There's been a lot going on because Isaac Heaven, there was a goalie, and I've forgotten his name, and Obi have all gone to Man United. I spoke about this on the podcast before. Obi we brought in I think it was from Sweden, an older age. I think it was 13, 14. He's only 17 now, I think. We brought him in and he was playing unbelievable against the youth teams, and he scored 7 in a game. It's unreal numbers. My theory on it was maybe he is looking better than he is because he's a very big guy. He's playing against young players. And then when senior football to youth football is a very different game. Not everyone can transition. The reason he and Heaven particularly left was, they were on youth numbers. We offered them main contracts with potential game time, but not guaranteeing it, for I think it was around $5,000 a week. Man United offered 60 to 80,000 between the two of them, so 60,000 Heaven, 80,000 Obi, and said you'll probably get game time, which they are because they both played in the FA Cup this week. That's why they left. It's not an Arsenal issue. It's not anything. It's a money talks type thing. Plus they're getting game time. But the hate that Obi has for Arsenal is so bizarre, considering we offered him a deal, that I guess maybe he felt disrespected by the number, which I think the number is a completely fair number for a youth player. Because with the Man United underneath, a Man United player scoring against the Arsenal youth, he put "thank God for you" or something like that, because of the Arsenal stuff. And I think there's a little bad blood going on because they're doing a lot of comments under stuff that's anti-Arsenal, some of these youth players. And then Man United went out against Fulham. Xerxes waved to the Arsenal fans when they knocked us out. So a Fulham player waved at him when he missed that final penalty. And Max Dowman, the 14-year-old, had said thank you to him underneath his post on Instagram as a little kind of get back at Obi. And someone put up a stat that Obi had, I think he had close to 1.5 xG chances, which is higher than any centre forward this season in any competitions had without scoring. I actually think he looked really sharp in the sense that he was in the right position constantly. I do think he looks a little awkward, but the fact he's getting the position is probably a very good sign for Man United. And some of his finishes look good, even though they're getting saved in a minute. He's kind of putting them in the right position. It's almost too clean. He's almost too accurate, maybe. He needs to scuff a couple or smash a couple and just get a goal. But I think goals are coming, so I know that's going to be hard for Arsenal fans to deal with. Whether he'll be playing for Bobo Glint in 3 years or whether he'll be playing for Man United and he's the next Andy Cole who left Hale End, I don't know. Time will tell. But I wouldn't like to be the one that would guess what that is going to be. And I say the same about Lewis Skelly, about Waneri. These guys, they're so young, they're so good, but they could, it could be an Amara Hutchinson. I don't know. I don't think he would have got into this Arsenal team. Well, he didn't. Haven't got as much game time if you're not exceptional. Because, if Saka and Smith Rowe and Willock and these guys had come through at this Arsenal team that were challenging for leagues and Champions Leagues, they don't get the time they got. They came through. They call it a sliding doors moment. That you need that perfect period of time where your team's down or they play games in which they're not bothered about and you can get more time and show your skill. Because, well, for example, Obi this year would have got a lot of game time at Arsenal, it turns out. And he might be getting offered the 80 grand that he got offered at Man United now because he's scored 15 goals and we're not looking for Isaac or Sesko or anyone. But you don't know. And it's the same with Mika Bierith. These guys aren't really Hale Enders. Bierith isn't because I don't think he's even stepped foot in Hale End. He's been on loan so many times. We brought him in from elsewhere. And Obi even wasn't a Hale Ender, but he was bought a couple of years ago. So they're not exactly kids that, they're not necessarily loyal to anything because they're not brought through. They're not Lewis Skelly and Waneri who are, London kids that come through as Arsenal fans and all these kind of things. So it's an interesting one. The FA Cup this weekend was interesting because I think City are the only big six side left, which is brilliant because there's teams like Villa, Bournemouth, Brighton, knocked out Newcastle. There's Preston still in there. I can't remember the others. Fulham, knocked down Man United. One of these teams is going to get a final, which is really good because the last few years there's been a lot of Arsenal, Chelsea, Man United, City, Liverpool type finals. And it'd be really good if City could drop out against Bournemouth away, and you see Villa, Bournemouth, Brighton, Palace or something final four. Because a lot of these teams have been waiting a long time. People talk about Arsenal waiting a while for a trophy. We won one 4 years ago, whatever it was, which is a bit, it's a bit of time. But you look at Newcastle and they play. I don't know why, but Paddy Power put out. But they play against Arsenal like they play against no one else. They've rolled over for Liverpool this week, and no one can say it's the style of play. They weren't even snapping into tackles, nothing. And I say every time we play them, they're going to lose the next three because they put too much into this game. And every time they beat us, then they lose the next three. And I think, what was that worth it? Like, what are they doing? Gordon having a little pop at Arsenal after winning against us in the Carabao. And him saying, I just stay humble, blah, blah. And now he's gone and got himself sent off and he'll miss that final. Probably cost him the game as well against Brighton. And, they're already in a 40-year wait for a trophy. They're in a final. That's what the kind of perspective is. This is the richest team in the world. I know we haven't had that money the whole time, but they're a big team. Challenged for league titles 25 years ago. They haven't won a trophy in so long. When you look at even Tottenham, it's like 2 trophies in the last 33 years or something. A Carabao Cup and an FA Cup, I think. These are the teams that are direct competition to Arsenal. And we've won an FA Cup recently. We've won 4, I think, in the last 9 years. Before that, it was a 10-year gap. We won a Premier League 3 times in 6 years. Won a few more FA Cups in there. It's mad that we're held to a standard of what, for example, Chelsea or City have done, or even Liverpool, when they're owned by multi billionaires that are ploughing money in weekly, and they have like Liverpool, Chelsea. If not everyone was on loan, have a squad of 59. Arsenal, when everyone's fit, has a squad of about 19, 20. That's without using youth. It's a very different world. So the fact that we're held to that level and not the level of the teams that are actually around us, teams like Tottenham, Newcastle, Villa, and Villa, get a lot of business done. And I do think the one mistake we've done is Asensio or Rashford. The difference they've made for Villa at times could have been the difference between us beating Forest 1-0 or beating West Ham in that game. And they didn't think we needed a loan when there was that many loans available. I think that's the real mistake by the board. I don't think I understood not buying one of these players, and I know the problem was I know we couldn't loan Rashford, but we could have loaned Asensio or Malin, because we can't loan from inside the Premier League. But we also had Tommy Setford fit, so Neto could have gone back to Bournemouth and we could have cancelled the loan and done one of these things. And yeah, it's not ideal, but we are, like I said, Tierney, Moreno and Sterling were our front three with no Odegaard to try and win that game late on. It's not good enough in that sense. The big fear of mine is that we get lower and lower and lower and we drop out the top four, because that would destroy the project big time, because all of a sudden you can't get the players you want next year. Then you're fighting from underneath. You're trying to get back into the top four next year and you push yourself back a year. I think if we can get, ideally top two, ideally win the Champions League, but I don't think that's going to happen with the year we're having, but a good run, maybe get some kind of benefit from it. For example, last year we got through the round of 16, which we hadn't done for 15 years or something. Get something like that out of the way, like get the Black Cats and walking under the ladder out of the way, ready for next year. Because if we can make the right signings and get top four and secure that money, and we're in profit, we could really be good next year and push on from where we are and go from second to maybe first, or push it further in the Champions League, maybe push on all accounts as far as trophies with a bigger squad. So I think there's a lot of positives, but it's been a weird week because I think almost took the edge off. I almost did this podcast last Wednesday ready for this week, because I was like, it was raw, but having a few days to not think about it was a nice weekend not to think about Arsenal. It's kind of, the positives are showing, and you're starting to go, do you know what? I'm actually proud of this season. It's been a weird season. If I'd been told this was how the season would go at the start of the season, I'd have been a bit disappointed. Not because of coming potentially second or third, hopefully, or Champions League and being out in the other cups, but if someone had said, oh, you're going to have this many injuries, this many sus decisions, deal with it, I would have been like, nah, there's no chance. I just wouldn't want to watch it, because it could be such a hard watch. And the next 10, however many games we play between now and the end of the season, it could be 10, it could be 15, 16. They're going to be hard. All of them are going to be a hard watch. So we've got to prepare for that. Have a break in the summer and go again. The thing I want to say before we move on to Premier League predictions is, as well, the Mateta injury, which was an awful one. I only saw it in hindsight. I saw it on X. And it's a really bad, reckless challenge. I know people, they've gone from thinking it's the worst thing they've ever seen to some people now saying they don't think it's that much of a foul. It's clearly a red card, because it's just reckless, out of control. The same referee sent off Lewis Skelly straight away. This time he needed VAR for this one. It's mind-boggling that a ref can see that and go, do you know what? I think it's fine. The guy's got 27 staples behind his ear. He's knocked out. He's taken directly to the hospital. It's just mad. It's a mad challenge. They need to keep an eye on that, because certain things in football is considered like at the professional level, there's a certain tackle that people just don't do, because they know everyone's kind of got a handshake deal of, don't hurt me because I need to pay the bills, I need to play games and have a long career. That kind of challenge is bordering on, we're not going to agree to that. But also what everyone loves about the FA Cup of get stuck in early and all that, because the smaller teams do it. I think there's just a way to do it. I do think it's a bad tackle, but I'm not as up in arms as a lot of people. It's very dangerous. It really could have ended worse than it was. But no, I'm not either one of the worst thing I've ever seen. Also, it's just a good tackle. It's unlucky. It shouldn't be a red. It definitely is a red. But we'll move on to prediction league. I've got a little notepad here of last week's games. There was only 6 games, and of those 6, Simon got 3, I got 2, Joe got 1, which in the overall standings puts Joe in last place at 114. I'm second in 119, and Simon's top 125. So it's all within 9 points still. It's getting tight. And if you remember, Joe was kind of going the opposite of everyone last week, and it didn't really go badly for him, nor did it go well. So this week we've got 10 games. It's a normal week. We've got Champions League tonight against PSV tomorrow night. Hopefully we can get through that. That's the big one. And then at the weekend we got Man United. I'll talk a bit more about that once we get to it in the prediction league. I've not got Joe or Simon's predictions yet. I'm going to write them in after the show. I think they're in the WhatsApp currently, but I've got mine. So if you're playing along at home, obviously you might completely disagree with me. You might completely agree with me. But the games we've got are Forest versus Man City. I think this is the midday game on Saturday. I've got Forest to win this. I think Forest have had a little bit of a weird couple of weeks. I still don't think City are as strong as they are. There's something a little bit wrong with them. And Arsenal learned the other day that they're not rubbish. You know, they're good. We didn't have an attack. City have an attack. But City aren't nowhere near the possession or defensive abilities that Arsenal have. So I think Forest will score. I think it'll be a score win for Forest, maybe 2-1. But I'm going to go Forest. Next game is Brighton-Fulham. Fulham coming off a really good FA Cup win against Man United away from home on penalties. Brighton a big win in the FA Cup against Newcastle. I actually think Brighton are having a good spell, so I'm going to go home win Brighton. I think I've gone a lot of home wins across the board here. I think out of the 10, I've got 7, 2 draws and 1 away. And you'll guess what the away is. Next one is Palace versus Ipswich. And I've gone Palace at home. I think Ipswich are not quite at Leicester and Saints level, but they've nearly given up. That's how I kind of feel about their season. I think Palace having a good moment. Ketty is finally getting on the score sheet. Beat Villa last week. Went through in the cup. Missing Mateta is going to be tough, but Eddie finding a bit of form is probably going to be ideal. Next one is Liverpool versus Saints. The less we talk about it, the better. Liverpool are going to smash them. I've triple captained Salah. Brentford versus Villa. I've actually gone Brentford. Villa are really odd. It's a Champions League week, so my ruling all year has been I'll go Villa unless it's a Champions League week. I think they're going to be a little tired, and that's not the place you want to be after a short week. Brentford away. The next one is Wolves versus Everton. I've gone draw because I think Wolves are pretty poor. Cunha got sent off, so I think he's missing 3 games now. Best player. Everton are good, but they're not great at scoring goals, so I'm going to go 0-0, maybe 1-1. So a draw. Chelsea home to Leicester. Like I said, I think Leicester have given up. I'm going to go Chelsea. Spurs, Bournemouth. I'm going to go draw because I think Bournemouth are really good, but Spurs struggle at home. I think they get the booze going or like a bit toxic, and I actually think they won't win it, but it'll be a draw. I'm going to avoid Man United, Arsenal to the end, which obviously all 3 of us are going to go Arsenal, and then we've got West Ham, Newcastle, which I've gone West Ham home. I think Gordon misses that game with the red. Isaac went off with a little injury, and I think Potter has got West Ham at least looking recognisable as a football team. So I think West Ham will win that. I think that's Monday Night Football. But the last game is Man United, Arsenal. I truly believe that the worst team in the league, other than the 3 that are going to go back down, is Man United. I really think they're poor. I don't know what it is about them, but they find an ability to, it's usually Bruno Fernandes. They find something and they just score. And I think it's when you spend that much money on players, even if they're all technically good individually, but just awful when it comes to tactics and style of play and all that kind of stuff, one of them will just find that bit of quality, and I think if we have the ball a lot in that game, someone will find, whether it's Garnacho or Fernandes, Xerxes, even Obi. Can you imagine the stories coming out of that if Obi scores on that one? Someone will find a bit of quality and potentially get a goal. And I feel like, even though I think Man United is 17th worst team in the league at the minute, their squad is of a team that should be top 5. Therefore, if you give them a chance, they will score. Whereas with like certain other teams, maybe a Brighton, something like that, sometimes you allow them the chances and they don't quite take them. I think Man United will take them because they have that quality. So it's a dangerous game. Realistically, we should roll over them. But the fact that we might be able to keep the ball the whole game and not let them in. But I just don't think we could play for 2 weeks. I don't think we'll score. The only way we'll score is if when Airy finds a half a yard and gets one of those curlers going, a set piece maybe, or someone takes a long ranger like Partey or Odegaard, or Rice appears late in the box. It just feels headless. Whereas Man United they've only got the head, they've got no body. So it's going to be interesting. I don't know what it'll be. Either way, I'll be watching it in a pool in Orlando, so it'll be an easier watch than usual. But we're going to go Arsenal, all three of us, I'm sure. I haven't written theirs down yet, but the rule in the podcast, we will go Arsenal, whether we think it's so or not. Title race-wise, there's a very high chance that's a draw and Liverpool win again. Mathematically, there is a chance, and Twitter will be in meltdown, we might have to give them a guard of honour at Anfield if they win the league the week before. So let's just hope that doesn't happen. Let's not hope we're the team that has to put them in the guard of honour. But between now and next week, we'll be flying to Orlando, coming back. We would play Man United away and PSV away, and we'll be getting set for PSV at home, and hopefully getting into that quarterfinals against Atletico, and getting prepared for, I think it's Chelsea at home. I don't know, I haven't looked ahead that far, but I know the next couple of games are a little, not the most comfortable. And I think this is really important that between this podcast and next, if we can get 3 points in the league away at Man United, which by the way we did last year, and that was the first time we'd done it in like 15 years, so there's no guarantees at all. And we can get a result at PSV to make the second leg a bit more manageable without an attack. That would be the perfect week. I must say this week I thought if we could beat Forest and Newcastle and City could do a number on Liverpool, that'd be the perfect weekend. The complete opposite happened. And even City losing, I wanted Spurs to actually beat City just to help us with the top 4 race, and nope. City won that one. They lost the one that we needed them to win, and they won the one we needed them to lose. So nothing's going our way generally across the league. So let's just hope this one's a good one, because I think it's an important one for morale, because the international break is kind of like the next break before that sprint to the finish. If we can get a couple of results in the league and really kind of feel confident with top 4 and have it quarterfinals waiting for us, even though I'd love to watch us go against Real Madrid over 2 legs, just for the fun and the spectacle, Atletico might be the game. Because saying that, I don't know, because Atletico, they'll do a low block and we just won't score, whereas Madrid will be quite open, I would have thought. I don't know. Either way, I don't think we'll get through that one, but if we have that to look forward to on the other side, that'll be good, and feel a bit more comfortable in that top 4. But that has been the podcast. I feel like we've covered everything that's kind of happened this week. Next week, hopefully slightly less echoey, maybe. Back on TikTok next week as well. So that'll be in 9 days. This is the Monday. We're usually up on a Wednesday. So we're up every single Wednesday about midday. And we do it live on TikTok, Gunners R Us Podcast, 10 a.m. GMT every single Wednesday, except for this week. This is an early pod. Enjoy the PSV game. Get ready for Man United game. We'll be back on time next week. And that's been Gunners R Us Podcast. Bye-bye.